Hey everyone, this is Stan, K9SWX. I currently live in an apartment building and utilize indoor antennas to receive various radio signals. The big thing I struggle with when playing radio is the amount of interference I receive. I decided to go around the apartment and unplug various devices to see if it reduced the amount of noise coming into the receiver. The first source of interference that I've known about for a while is the Ubiquiti Wi-Fi access point. The model number is UAP-AC-M, and it is powered over a Cat6 Ethernet cable. The noise is noticeable on just about all of the HF bands. Here are a few examples. Here on 10 meters, you can see 3 bright wavy lines spread across the waterfall. Here's what it sounds like. Now watch what happens when I unplug the Ethernet cable from the access point. There it is. Now we'll switch over to 40 meters. The access point is currently unplugged. Watch the lines come back as I plug the access point back in. It's not as bright on 40 meters as it was on 10 meters, but it's definitely still there. Sometimes the interference will slide down right over 7074 where FT8 is and wipe out the signals. One more example is over on 20 meters. You can still see the 3 wavy lines with the access point plugged in. And as soon as I unplug it, they disappear. And on a side note, that thicker line around 14450 seems to be something from my laptop, as I don't see that on other computers. Jumping up to the VHF bands, I have a different form of interference. Sadly, this interference is right on top of the FT8 frequency on 2 meters. This interference is more stable and doesn't move around like the previous example. I have numerous Raspberry Pi computers around my shack, and none of them make anywhere near the noise than this one does. This particular Raspberry Pi 3 has 2 SDR dongles connected to it. The first dongle is a FlightAware USB Pro stick, the blue one if you are familiar with their USB sticks. This one comes with a bandpass filter that blocks out non-1090 MHz frequencies. It also has an RF amplifier built in. This stick is connected to the matching FlightAware 1090 antenna, which is sitting in my window. It feeds airplane data to sites like FlightAware, FlightRadar, ADS-B Exchange, and others. The other SDR is a basic RTL SDR V3 dongle, which is used for streaming the local NOAA weather radio station to sites like Broadcastify and NOAAweatherradio.org. As soon as I unplug this particular Raspberry Pi, the noise goes away. So now that we've seen a couple different types of interference that I'm having, what can be done to kind of reduce it or eliminate it altogether? Well, the first thing I could do is obviously move to a new place that I can put up outdoor antennas. It's not really in the cards right now, so I'm kind of stuck here. So I need to make the best of the bad situation, so to speak. I could just keep the access point and the Raspberry Pi unplugged, but I do like having Wi-Fi in the apartment. One thing I could try is replacing the current Ethernet cable that's using power over Ethernet with something with a little better shielding. Right now I'm using a Cat6 UTP, which is unshielded, so I don't know if switching to, I think it's STP, would help or not with that. I've read that there's some other issues with going to that kind of cable with grounding and all that, so I don't know if that's something I want to experiment with or not. I guess I could also try to get a non-PoE wireless access point. That is one option, I guess. I do like the Ubiquiti stuff. I could just, hardwire everything in the shack with Ethernet instead of using Wi-Fi for a lot of it. That may introduce its own problems, though, so I don't know how good that would be to try. One thing that I could try that's pretty inexpensive is to get a metal case for that specific Raspberry Pi and see if that can kind of block some of the interference I'm getting on, especially on 2 meters, which you saw on the FT8 portion of the band. I could also try moving the Raspberry Pi away from the receiving antenna that I'm using to see if that reduces the interference as well. It is pretty close, so if I could, I don't have much room in the shack, so I'm going to have to tinker with that and see if I can get a little bit more spacing between the two and see what happens. I could try a different SDR without the RF amp that the FlightAware models have. I really like that model because it's got the filter, the bandpass filter, and does a pretty good job of receiving planes even with the antenna indoors. I'm usually see planes, you know, up to 100, 125 miles away, so that's not too shabby with it, you know, with the antenna indoors. So maybe, and I do have a few other SDRs around here I could try. I could try hooking the AirSpy up to it and see if that makes any difference. It might reduce the interference, but then again, I may lose some reception, you know, some distance on those planes. So we'll tinker with that and see what happens. Lastly, I mean, I know a lot of people use ferrite beads and those toroid cores. I could try putting those on, you know, any and every wire I can, but that can get kind of expensive if you're using the good quality ones. So, you know, that might be something I tinker with. So we'll see what happens there. So have any of you experienced interference like this? And if so, how did you reduce or eliminate it? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and make sure to ding my bell so you are notified when I post new videos. Thanks again, and 73 from K9SWX.